So we're back with the Bryan Danielson AEW run match, and today we are following our previous match with Daddy Magic to our tag match this week. We have Bryan Danielson teaming up with Danny Garcia, the Dragon Slayer at this point, versus his former group at this point now, the Jericho Appreciation Society, Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. Now, this match it's not the most engaging, and it's because it's not designed to be a Bryan match. It's not designed to be a Jericho match. It's not even designed to be a Garcia match. It's very much centered to be Garcia and Guevara kind of just going at it with, that bit more interest with the two legends of their technical mentors in a way. Even though Chris is both of their mentors, but whatever. And it's fine for what that is. Like, the heat that Guevara gets at this point, I forget what he did it. I think this was during the whole Mercedes stuff, which, I've made my feelings on Sammy Guevara. I think Sammy Guevara is way too try-hard, but the heat he gets here is pretty good. But it's a lot, you still get the match starts off and Jericho's Jericho's you're like, oh, this guy's sleazeball. Him and Garcia shake hands straight away, and it's like, what? And then Garcia, basically shows him no respect, and he's standing over him, and then Jericho goes to front and hits a brutal chop. And it kind of devolves into Garcia's it's a lot of Garcia trying to get either Jericho or Guevara. And mainly with Guevara's role here, he's trying to drag drag Jericho away, or distract Garcia, and it's very much like a 2v1 type of deal. Bryan's role here is kind of just to take care of that, you know what I mean? Just to be like, okay, I'll take care of Sammy. And then when he gets moments with Jericho, because they announced our next match in the run, which is him and Jericho next week, which look forward to that. But also it's with the kicks, he does a lot of kicks. Obviously, he starts with a Psycho. When Bryan gets tagged in, he instantly Psycho knees Jericho out, who's outside the ring. That's what he does instantly, which is definitely fun. But and then I'll never deny the athleticism of Sammy Guevara. I never will. I think Sammy Guevara is a very athletic wrestler. I just don't think he's the most engaging wrestler, and for me that's very important. I feel like there's this one moment where Garcia early on is about to do a dive, and so Bryan's done a dive to take Jericho out. Jericho's kind of stumbling, and then he's waiting out there, and Guevara's doing it. Guevara goes to do a dive to attack Bryan, and Bryan hits him with an uppercut, and that was really cool. Bryan lands a nasty, I think this was on Guevara, in the corner during the match. He lands a brutal, fucking Claudio-esque uppercut. I really like that. The connection that got was really good. Again, it does, there's a point where, again, it's a lot of Garcia, and I'm a fan of Danny Garcia. I'm never going to deny that, so I was happy about that. But I do think what's cool about this one is there's this one moment where it's Bryan, and it's Garcia first, and Garcia obviously gets his Boston Crab, basically his version of the Walls of Jericho. He gets that in on Jericho, I think it's either Jericho or Guevara, obviously, and then Bryan gets it in on himself. Bryan gets a good face hold, but that gets broken up by Jericho or Guevara, the stem. So that's kind of the dynamic here. And not that Bryan and Garcia don't have a good dynamic. It's obviously just not as strong as Bryan and Jericho's and Guevara's. But then there's a point where they're both doing the elbows. You know what I mean? That's pretty cool. There's a nice. That's to know how much Garcia looks up to Bryan, as he damn well should. That was pretty cool, and I really did enjoy that. But I do think what's cool here is it's more of a coming out. I don't want to say a coming out party, because I feel like Garcia, at this point, Garcia's pure champ. You know what I mean? So he doesn't really have that coming out party, but you know what I mean? It's definitely something like that. But I think here it's a solid little show out for Garcia. It's a good show out to show how athletic Guevara is. The finish I don't like. I will say so when the match. So there's this one spot before the finish. So I will say, so Jericho and Bryan are outside the ring, and they're at the announce table, and Jericho lifts Bryan up and hits him on the table, and he just gets the edge of the table, and it only smashes the edge of the table, and it's literally the tiniest bit, and Bryan, it looked real brutal. It looked like it just attacked his lower back, but then you realise it was on the belt. At least that's how they tried to sell it. So it was on the Ring of Honor belt at this point, and then Jericho hits him with a suplex and hits Bryan through the table, which takes Bryan out the match at this point. So then it becomes just Guevara versus Garcia, and Garcia's got Guevara in this hold. I think it might have been a Boston Crab. It was a submission hold, and it looked like Guevara was about to tap, and Jericho runs up, hits Garcia with the Ring of Honor World Championship, and then Garcia's out, and then Guevara gets the pin, and that's the win for the Jericho Appreciation Society. I do like at the end where, like, Guevara's off celebrating with the rest of the JAS, with Daddy Magic, and then like Jericho normally expect him to be this spiteful piece of shit, but he looks at Garcia, and you can tell he feels some sort of remorse, and I'm like, I like that, but, like, it shows through, even at this point, Jericho wasn't, like, what he is now, and I'm still a fan of Jericho. I just feel like at this point it was a really nice blend of the storytelling was still there, and I really like that. I really enjoyed that. But that's kind of the match. The match itself, bell to bell, is kind of whatever. Like, it's not insane. It doesn't decide who it wants to focus around. Like, it focuses around the reaction for Guevara, but it feels like it's trying to cater to Garcia at the start and then cater to Guevara at the end, which I don't really think blends. I feel like you should have stuck it with Garcia and made it a bit more technical and strike heavy. But then Jericho, having been in there, does slow the pace down, and Bryan doesn't really have a role in this match. He just kind of exists, and it's just kind of to be like, hey, me and you will team up, you know what I mean? But he gets taken out with the table, so that kind of sucks. But it's not bad. It's not a bad match. It's definitely better than the Daddy Magic. It's better than that match. Hey, what you mean? But I do like the small little bits of character stuff with Jericho and Garcia. I don't know why, I thought that was really interesting, really well worked. I also think when Bryan's in there, obviously he does elevate it to a level. Again, the uppercut he does is really good. But I just feel like he just has this lack of role, and it just feels like it's one of those matches where he just kind of just exists and roams about, and it's like, for me, I just don't feel like it feels like they just needed a tag partner, and Yuta had the match with MJF at the earlier the night. I think Moxley had a promo, we didn't have the match. I don't know where the hell Claudio was. So, like, they could have, because, I don't know, they could have done. But I feel like that's kind of the reason they just give it to Bryan. Obviously, Bryan, had the stuff with Garcia last week, but still. And then I just feel like it just kind of the match felt very aimless, and it's not a massive criticism, because I do enjoy some hectic matches. Look at all the 8-mans AEW does nowadays. But I feel like with this one, it just felt like there's no real sense of point. It just felt like it was only like a 15-minute match. And it's like, okay, let's just get it over with to get the win and set up Bryan versus Jericho next week for the Ring of Honor belt. And that's fine. That's fine. It's not a bad match. It's not a great match or anything. It's just one of those, you know what I mean? It's not the most Bryan heavy match, and that does kind of hinder my enjoyment. Bias, obviously. But I just think it's just something that needed a bit more focus, frankly. And I feel like Guevara getting the pin kind of sucked. I think Jericho should have got the pin, but that's just semantics, being a bit nerdy. But I feel like it could have done a bit more with Bryan. I feel like that's my biggest critique with the match, is it should have just done a bit more with Bryan and kind of just not, like, done so much with Guevara. I feel like that was just, I just didn't get that. But again, this is the time where they're probably thinking, oh, Guevara's the guy, when he's never been the guy in his goddamn life. So, yeah. Fine match. Nothing insane, nothing incredible, but, another Bryan match. Barely a Bryan match, admittedly. But I do like Danny Garcia. I like the stuff he does here, and obviously, I like this stuff with the face turn. He's definitely over as hell at this point. So, yeah, that is my thoughts on Bryan Danielson and Danny Garcia versus the Jericho Appreciation Society, Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho in a tag match on AEW Dynamite. Let me know what you thought of the match, and yes, like we said previously, our next match is Bryan Danielson versus Chris Jericho, number 3.